G'day, guys. Those images that you just saw in the opening there, they hurt, don't they? They make you feel pretty flat to see how happy Collingwood were after that win yesterday. They were good. They wanted that. They really wanted that, and it showed. It showed after the game. And unfortunately, we failed the test. We really did. We failed the test. And there's nothing wrong to admit that we failed. We did fail. And the fact of the matter is we put ourselves in a position to play finals. It's still not out of the question, but it now looks, it looks very, very remote. And that's a failure. It is a failure. So we have to cop that on the chin. The thing that I thought about the most about this game I went right back to that first quarter when Sam Walsh kicked our second goal, and he ran from the field, and the Channel 7 cameras, they went with Walsh right to the bench, and he was in an incredible amount of pain and distress as he went from the ground, right till he got to the interchange gates, and he sat down and he was gasping for oxygen. And I thought to myself, this is a second-year player who just works his ass off for the football club. We know that he's got a huge tank, and obviously it's one thing to have a good tank, but it's another thing to actually use it. And then I thought to myself after the game, he was probably the only player in our football club that could actually hold his head up for 4 quarters. And that's an indictment, really. That's an indictment on our team on yesterday's performance. With so much to play for, with a season on the line, that a second-year player, the youngest player we had playing yesterday, could be the only one that the coach could probably look and go, you fucking put in a 4-quarter effort. And that showed in the pain in that kid. And I don't think we had enough players, particularly after half-time, who wanted to work as hard as what someone like Sam Walsh did. Hugely disappointing display. I went for a run yesterday morning before the game, and, I was thinking about the expectations going into this game, and look, you're always worried, and the things that run through your mind. The main narrative of the game, the main narrative was about the 4 points, a chance to play finals football up against a wounded Collingwood who are out of form as well. So it's always dangerous, and the main storyline though was the 4 points and the chance to play finals football to keep the season alive, and so much on the line, and there's no excuse. We're coming off a 9-day break. Collingwood out to go east side bottom. Treloar, Howe, to be kept goalless for the second half was just so disappointing after having a lead and momentum in that third quarter. Allowing Collingwood to kick their biggest score since round 3 and have the most scoring shots that they had in the game this season. A huge lost opportunity. And the fact of the matter is we should be playing finals football. We talked ourselves up, and we failed. And there's nothing wrong to say that we failed. To kick 2 goals from set shots in a game of football. And I think we had 4 marks inside 50, and the 2 goals from set shots were Ed Curnow and Harry Mackay, was just pathetic in regards to the way we wanted to play. Our execution inside forward 50 was poor. It was just absolutely ordinary. So when I was going on this run, the main narrative was all about just how important this game was. But then I started thinking about this game, and that main storyline, and I was starting to think about the little subplots. Like an epic movie, you have all these little different storylines that pop up in movies, and I thought about a few of them which needed to go our way, and what I would have liked to have seen and been talking about at the end of this game. And this is where I want to take this review. Some of these things that it was just clear that Collingwood, they were just in the end too good, and that hurts a little bit as well. You need to cop that on the chin. The first one I want to talk about was the Jacob Weitering, Darcy Moore. They weren't matched up on each other, but both, have been talked up this year as just two of the best young defenders in the game with Harris Andrews. And, who could get that other All-Australian spot. You know, is it a Darcy Moore or is it a Jacob Weitering? Now, really, at the end of the day, I couldn't give a fuck about who's all Australian. I'm more concerned about who's going to have the bigger impact in the game for their respective teams. And it just happens that we're going to, playing each other. And I wanted to see out of Darcy Moore and Jacob Weitering who was going to have the biggest impact. And it was, by the end of the game, it was clear as daylight that Darcy Moore, I'm not saying he's a better footballer, but on the day, he was absolutely outstanding for Collingwood. He stood up at the right times, his athleticism, his rebound, his ball use. He was far too good for both Mackay and also Casbolt. And look, Weitering was okay, but, it was a so-so performance as far as I was concerned, and it was a clear win for Collingwood with that little subplot within the main storyline. The second one was the 2017 draft, and Paddy Dow, who we took pick 3, and Jaden Stevenson, who the surprisingly took with pick 7. Well, not surprisingly. Surprisingly, he drifted that late. He had the heart condition. And both boys had outstanding debut seasons. Paddy Dow was really good in his first season, and Stevenson was outstanding, won the Rising Star. But both had dropped away, okay? Look, they've had second-year blues, and Stevenson's had his issues off the field. He's been in and out of the team this year and hasn't been able to recapture that form. And Paddy has had his injury concerns this year. And I was interested to see in this game because we brought Dow back in for some X factor from breakaway speed from stoppages, some power, and we were all interested to see how it go. And you're not going to come back into the team and just have an absolutely mind-blowing game. But yeah, I just thought he was pretty average, to be perfectly honest. He looks good though. He looks good, and we need to give him more opportunities for the rest of the year. But Stevenson was outstanding. He really hit back, and if I was a Collingwood supporter, I'd be absolutely wrapped in his performance. He's that type of hybrid forward that we really lack. That medium-sized forward who's quick and is fast and is good overhead. He was off target, probably should have kicked 5. And it just it just sort of highlights, and it sort of still raises the question about Paddy Dow. And you think about pick 3 v pick 7 and how nice it would have Jaden Stevenson in your team. But look, Paddy's still got a lot of time up his sleeve, but that was a huge win. Stevenson destroyed Lockie Plowman, absolutely made him look stupid. So that was a big win for Collingwood. I also thought on my run as I was running along, the mind was going 100 miles an hour. I was thinking about the mature age recruits, and, there was a great article written by, I think it was Riley Beveridge, on the AFL website about Michael Gibbons, mature age recruit and been overlooked in so many drafts. And Brody Mychek is the same story for Collingwood. They were both, up against each other, not playing on each other, but who was going to have the biggest impact? Gibbo's been good this year. Did he read that story? Did he get it too far ahead of himself? I just didn't think he played a good game yesterday, and he had no real impact on this game at all. Whereas Brody Mychek just continues to get the job done. And when I looked at the end of the game and that goal from outside 50 in that last quarter, clutch moment in the game where we couldn't get it from Jack Martin in that third quarter, Brody Mychek steps up in the last quarter. He was huge. And you look at that, this is a bloke that played at probably Tasmania, he played at Werribee, he played at Port Melbourne. So they won the mature age VFL recruit by a mile yesterday. I thought Mychek was outstanding. Gibbo was pretty ordinary. Then I was thinking about who was going to be the contested ball. Who was going to, both teams pride themselves on contest work, harder at the contest. David Teague repeats that over and over and over again. And it was always going to be Cripps v Adams. Maybe not head-to-head, but in terms of impact and around the ball. And it was, and I mean, we can't just all, sort of pile on the shoulders of Patrick Cripps, just like Collingwood don't want to pile it on the shoulders of Adams. But Adams was outstanding. He was absolutely outstanding in that respect yesterday for 4 quarters. He just willed himself to every contest. And Cripper was he was ordinary yesterday, really, really, really ordinary. He He couldn't have had a worse game in a really important game for the football club, which was disappointing as well. Another little subplot within the main storyline was going to be the impact of the real sort of the veterans, and we've got a few of them in our team. And, you go right back to the 2005 draft. We took Mark Murphy with pick 1 and the Pies took Scotty Pendlebury with pick 5. And yesterday, for whatever reason, David Teague decides to push Mark Murphy back out onto a wing, which I thought was just poor. Really poor coaching. And it just poses a lot of problems about Mark Murphy and where he sits for the rest of his time at Carlton, assuming he's going to go on next year. Because I believe his only position now is in the middle, where he plays his best football. And his last 3 weeks have been really good in the middle of the ground. Now suddenly he's thrown onto a wing, and he was just average yesterday, just an average performance, no impact on the game at all. Whereas Pendlebury, from that same draft, that same experience, you got a former captain up against the captain, and once again Pendlebury just beautiful in traffic. Tough and hard over the football, just calm at the right times, just wheeled his team sort of back into the game when the momentum was against them, and he was just a clear winner. They didn't go head-to-head, but he just had the influence, and I looked at that before the game. I wanted Murph not to have 28 against the Suns last week. I wanted him to have 22 in this game and kick a goal, and really step up in important times, and he didn't do that, which is really important. I also was thinking about Paulson coming into the team and what the club earmarked for Paulson to come back into this game. And it wasn't about, I don't know if it was about defending hard, but more taking the game on and showing some flair. And I heard about, the sidestep and his ball use, but it just didn't pan out that way. Now, whether that was, we brought in Paulson and Collingwood brought in Isaac Quainer. Quainer's the second year and Paulson's been on the list now for his 4th year and playing a new position. But after half-time, it was Quainer the one who stood out for Collingwood. He was outstanding. His power and his kicking, his explosiveness from half back, his ability to get through the middle of the ground. And we got none of that. We got none of that from Paulson. Probably he had a couple of moments in the first quarter, but really, he just went missing. And I'm not having a go at Paulson here because I think he deserves another opportunity next week to prove himself. But you look at that, who was brought in? Quainer brought in to give Collingwood some spark from half back, and we've been clearly lacking that transition, and we brought in Paulson to do the same thing, and it never happened. And I suppose one of the reasons why it didn't happen is because Paulson, I think in the end, had to go play on Josh Thomas, who was far too nimble and far too good for Tom Williamson, who had a shocker in that first quarter and a half. He just was all over the place. So maybe Paulson had to play that lockdown role. But I thought Quainer, he was just a huge impact for Collingwood, particularly after half-time. And I suppose the final one from a player point of view, and one that sort of hurts me a little bit, is you just need one or two of you, that sort of younger type player, and I'm talking younger, we've got Walsh, obviously, but he's a number 1 draft pick and he's a freak of bloody nature. I'm talking the next level. And I was thinking, the guy that I was thinking about before the game was for Collingwood was Josh Dacos. And I followed Collingwood quite closely for the whole year. And he's just had an outstanding year for the Pies. He's really come of age, and he's got unbelievable pedigree, unbelievable, and we all know that. His dad was one of the all-time greats, but he's a very, very special player, Josh Dacos. Not because of the things he can do, and I'm not talking about the freak goals or, popping up at the important times, which are all really good traits that he's got. But his work rate is really good and his ball use is really good. And he really shone on the stage yesterday in a really important game for the football club. He stood up. We're talking about a 21-year-old who stood up on the big stage, okay? He's got 30 games under his belt and he was outstanding. When are we going to see that from a David Cunningham, and I know he didn't play yesterday, but when are we going to see that from a Paddy Dow? When are we going to see that from a Lockie O'Brien? You know, when Jack Silvani, are we ever going to see that from a Jack Silvani? Are we ever going to see that from a Sam Petreski-Seaton? You know, are we ever going to see it from a Zach Fisher? I know Fish has been pretty good when he's been back, but are we going to get that level of impact? And all Dacos yesterday was just so influential in that game that it just sort of got me thinking about, Jesus Christ, we just need some of our sort of younger blokes in that sort of smaller type younger blokes to really take that next level. And frankly, they haven't done that thus far. And then the other little subplot from yesterday, and one of the main ones for me was in the coach's box. And, you know, Collingwood got the 4 points, but that, for me, there was a big win for Nathan Buckley. And I know he's coached a lot longer than David Teague, but when you look at them as players, you know, Teague, your blue collar, back pocket specialist, you know, did it the hard way, up against the Rolls Royce, Nathan Buckley, you know, he was just an all-time great, so hugely skillful and, you know, great footballer. Had a big win in the coach's box. And I didn't see any of that blue collar work ethic that Teague was probably known for by our team. We looked flat, you know, and Buckley won all the battles. You know, he isolated Plowman inside forward 50. You know, we were slow to react with that. Maynard on bets after half time, allowing Quainer and Noble to get off the chain. They won that battle. They won the centre battle. They got Elliott in there, which was outstanding. So they dominated clearances between those three, Pendlebury, Elliott and Adams. So they won that battle. You know, and on Teague's behalf, you know, managing Cottrell was interesting. I mentioned last week that I thought maybe I was wrong, but I did mention that I thought it was a nice little masterstroke by Teague to have two of the best gut-running young players in the competition on either wing in Cottrell and Walsh, and how well we can run out games with those two players. And I just thought Cottrell would have been a perfect matchup on Dacos's wing, and Walsh could have done his work on his wing on Main. And yeah, that was poor. I just think he didn't work that one through. And once again, the execution, not getting good players, you know, not getting skillful players in the middle of the ground to execute that ball inside 50, you know, continues to be a huge concern. So that little subplot went well in favour of Nathan Buckley yesterday. Look, that's about a wrap. Very, very flat here. The good thing is we've only got, 3 or 4 days now before we face GWS, who, let's face it, have hit a nice bit of form. I thought they were really good against the Eagles. A couple of weeks back, the Eagles got the jump on them, but they really worked back into the game. And then they pulled Fremantle's pants down on the weekend, and a lot of their players are coming back into the form. Jake Riccardi's a fine young player, has come in. They lose, I think Josh Kelly's out with concussion, but they've got some weapons. And we're going to have to manage this team. How are we going to manage this team now? Who's going to go out? It's going to be fascinating to see what happens this Thursday. And it's going to be fascinating to see what this group is actually sort of made of. Do they just collapse or fold like a deck of cards, or do they, you know, do they truly believe that they're capable and good enough to keep their finals hopes alive in 2020?